Hi there! I'm Voluptua von Temptitillatrix, defender of Western civilization, queen of Bavarian barnyard porn, and treasurer of the Alex Jones Defense Fund.
It starts with a war growl. It starts with getting fired up, staring at yourself in the mirror and showing some teeth and saying, I'm a human being, I have dignity, I'm going to resist, I'm going to start recognizing the propaganda, I'm going to break free from it, humanity's going to come together. You punch me, I'll pull your arms out of your sockets.
Our conservatism is under threat from a bunch of hippies who claim to be better at it than we are. None more noxious than Chase Muldoon, so-called ultra-conservative legal eagle. Your Honor, in this case of Buddha versus Monsanto, my client, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, father of modern conservative philosophy.
Objection!
Order!
Where did this come from?
Justice is blind to matters of race, creed, color.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we set aside identity politics, we can easily demonstrate that my client Buddha is indeed father of modern conservative philosophy. In Mahaparinibbana Sutta, most trusted source, it is recorded that Siddhartha gave ancient Indian Republic 7 principles to guarantee their survival, identical to Reflections on the Revolution in France, Western Manifesto of Modern Conservatism. First, counsels, Dharma Wheel of Direction. Buddha declared that Vaji Republicans would grow and not decline if they met frequently to decide their business. Frequent meetings of Parliament by which the whole government would be under the constant inspection and active control of the popular representative. Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution in France. Second, peace. Parasol of protection and compassion. If Vajis met in harmony, left in harmony, and carried on business in harmony, they would grow and not decline. A revolution will be the very last resource of the thinking and the good. Edmund Burke. Third, tradition. Ways of never exhausted treasure. If Vajis do not make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but hold to ancient Vajian traditions, they would grow and not decline. To preserve our ancient, indisputable laws and liberties and that ancient constitution of government which is our only security for law and liberty. Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution in France. Fourth, elders, eternal knot of cause and effect. If Vajis honor, respect, esteem and venerate Vajian elders and think them worth listening to, they would not decline. People who never look back to their ancestors will not look forward to posterity. Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution in France. Fifth, women, golden fish of fertility and freedom. If Vajis don't forcibly abduct women or girls of clans and make them live with them, they can expect growth and not decline. In this scheme of things, a woman is only an animal, and not an animal of the highest order. Edmund Burke. Sixth, shrines, the conch of spiritual calling. If Vajis honor, respect, esteem, and venerate Vajian shrines, inner or outer, not neglecting the proper offerings made in the past, they will grow, not decline. When ancient opinions and rules of life are taken away, the loss cannot possibly be estimated. From that moment we have no compass to govern us. Edmund Burke. Seventh, sages, the white lotus of enlightenment. If Vajis organize proper protection and shelter for enlightened sages, so that more might come to the realm and live in comfort, they can expect growth, not decline. Woe to the country that would madly and impiously reject the service of the talents and virtues. Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution in France. Yikes! Don't tell the libs or they'll be triggering us for weeks!
Here he is, Lois, the leader of the black. Watch him suck up that gas. Oh my God! He is a special and everything's good. Who wants that teeth done by the Marquis de Sade?
Oh, that hurts! Wait, I'm not numb!
Shut up. Open wide. Here I come! I am your dentist, and I enjoy the career that I picked. I'm your dentist, and I get off on the pain I inflict.
Oh, that is it! I thought I'd reached my limit with Jesus Christ was a queer, positive, intersectional social justice warrior. And by the time we got to Calvin Coolidge was a multiculturalist eco-feminist, I was ready to snap. But this, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, was the father of modern conservative philosophy. That is the final straw. This is shameless cultural appropriation of conservatism. I mean, obviously, as a conservative, I don't believe in cultural appropriation, but if I did, this would be it. Screw this. This video is supposed to be about food. It says food on the thumbnail. What does any of this anarcho-wank about systems of government have to do with food?
From the high Canadian Rockies to the land of Mexico, the city and the country, wherever you may go. Through the wild and windy weather, the sun and sleet and rain, comes a-whistling through the country, this farmer labor train. Listen to the jingle and the rumble and the roar, she's rolling through New England to the West Pacific shore. It's a long time we've been waiting now, she's whistling round the bend, to roll on into Congress on that farmer labor train.
And you're watching CakeTube, the free-thinking, right-libertarian, liberty-loving alternative to BreadTube. If the people like BreadTube, just wait till we let them eat CakeTube. So-called ultra-conservative legal eagle. But my client, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, father of modern conservative philosophy, had problem. He was opposed to slavery, complex economic system fundamental to society in 6th century BC. How could conservative Buddha, with his love of personal responsibility and hatred of innovation, achieve radical revolutionary system change? Could genius of Buddha devise model of conservative, libertarian system change?
Objection.
Just answer the question, please.
Oh, I intend to, Your Honor. Buddha was big fan of Vaji democracy, or Sangha, but unsatisfied by morals of republic, so created his own voluntary Buddhist Sangha with higher ethical standards, abstaining from aggression, divisive speech, sexual misconduct, and slave trade. Buddha had just invented philosophy of immediatism, immediately and individually committing to do that which, if it were generally done, would solve collective problem. Don't get me wrong, boys. When it comes to literal human slavery, I'm as much on the fence as any other libertarian. But what does it really involve, I ask you? Pamphlets, poems, sentimental novels, aka woke propaganda, political memes, embroidered on clothes and printed on tea sets to be displayed at social events, like some kind of social media, aka virtue signaling, boycotts, aka cancel culture. I hate to buzzkill pill you boys, but libertarian system change is just another word for SJW wokeism.
Indy, now let's get out of here.
Right. All of us.
I think I may say with total confidence that if Jordan Peterson had been around in the 19th century, slavery would never have been abolished.
It starts with a war growl. It starts with getting fired up, staring at yourself in the mirror and showing some teeth and saying, I'm a human being, I have dignity, I'm going to resist, I'm going to start recognizing the propaganda, I'm going to break free from it, humanity's going to come together. You punch me, I'll pull your arms out of your sockets.
Laughing at you, smug fat little bastard. golden-haired goddess of harvest, Demeter to Greeks and Ceres to Romans, was first to plow and bend nature to her will. Her daughter, beautiful Persephone, gathering flowers in Valley of Nyssa, was abducted by Hades, god of underworld, shrieking so loud that Demeter heard, and bellowed like cow that has lost its calf. Then green fields turned to snow, and fruits withered on branches. For Demeter's fertility made earth bloom, and now her heart was winter. So cruel famine fell on land. None could cheer Demeter but Bobo, goddess of feminist free speech. To make earth bloom again, gods of Greece sent for Persephone to join her mother. But because she ate underworld pomegranates, she spends 3 months of every year down below, while earth falls into winter with Demeter sweeping. Then returns to her mother to bring back flowers, fruits, and harvest, creating seasons of nature. In Roman Republic, Ceres was not only goddess of fertility, but of democracy and popular assemblies. Polybius, great political thinker and inspirer of U.S. Constitution, believed tyranny comes in seasons, like nature, called anacyclosis. Good king comes to throne, but his successors become tyrants. Aristocracy overthrows tyrant, but is corrupted into oligarchy. People overthrow oligarchs and establish democracy, but it becomes mob rule, tyranny of majority, until conformist mob chooses strong populist leader. New king. King. Tyrant. Aristocracy. Oligarchy. Democracy. Mob rule. King again. According to Polybius, Roman Republic had overcome anacyclosis by combining all 3 systems, separating and balancing their powers so that none could dominate. Consuls as kings, Senate as aristocracy, and popular assembly as democracy. But it was not to last. Ballooning wealth inequality, privatized armies, and populist erosion of democratic norms led to military hero named dictator for life, and collapse of republic after 482 years. Oligarchy, mob rule, tyrant. Roman Republic had not finally defeated anacyclosis.
Reckless is he. Now, matters are worse.
That boy is our last hope.
No, there is another.
In medieval West Africa, Ibonri Kingdom was founded on Roman Republican principles, with power separated and balanced between elected priest king Ezenri, Nzemabwa Council of Ozo aristocracy, and Ohanaeze democratic system of people's assemblies. Because no group held absolute power, and every Igbo had democratic voice, they adopted libertarian slogan Igbo Enweze, Igbo have no kings.
Igbo enweze, ndị Igbo enweze bihe na-akọwa. Igbo enweze, ewoghị Igbo enweze, ndị Igbo enweze. Ọ bụ gịnị mere na ndị Igbo enweghị eze? Bihe na-ajụ ndị Igbo, gịnị mere na ndị Igbo enweghị onye ndu? Gịnị mere na ndị Igbo enweghị eze? Ajụjụ na-ajụ ndị Igbo, gịnị mere na ndị Igbo enweghị onye ndu? Ọ bụ na ndị Igbo anyị enweghị ego, anyị nwere ego. Ọ bụ na ndị Igbo anyị enweghị mmadụ, anyị nwere mmadụ. Ọ bụ na ndị Igbo anyị enweghị ndị mara ihe, anyị nwere ha.
Roman Republic might be Europe's top tradition of anti-tyranny, but it was Aboriginal Australians who became global masters of decentralized micro-government over thousands of years of uninterrupted development, achieving chiefless societies through incredibly intricate separation and balance of power, by kin group, by totemism, by dual sex organization, and by generation.
If I arrive in town today and I don't know a person, once I find out who has the correct kinship alignment to me, it means that I am automatically granted accommodation and food. The first level of kinship is moiety. Derived from the Latin word for half, in moieties, everything, including people and the environment, are split into these two halves. These two mirror images must come together. In traditional nations and languages, they have their own terms for moiety. For instance, in Arnhem Land, the two halves are Dua and Yiricha. To the Wiradjuri, it's Dilby and Kupathan. Children will inherit either their mother or their father's moiety. And you can only marry someone with a different moiety, as those with the same moiety are considered to be siblings.
Separation and balance of power among Igbo kin groups was not as complicated as Australian system. But each Igbo village was divided among families, and village governed by Amala, council of elders made up of head of every family.
All right, so the second level of kinship is actually totems. Each person has at least 4 totems which represent their nation, their clan, and their family group. Your personal totem actually recognizes your individual strengths and weaknesses, or the way that I was actually taught, it's actually somebody's connection, and it's the purpose that you were born for. People don't own their totems. Rather, they are accountable for them. Each person has the responsibility to ensure that their totems are protected and passed on for the next generation. We believe that they will actually ensure that all things continue in future. If I have 5 different totems, that means that I can't actually hunt or kill or harm my totem in any way, shape or form. But if I actually have a sister, my sister is then going to have different totems to me. So she will be able to eat what I can't, but that's going to ensure in the future that all of those things will continue, or what New South Wales government like to call sustainability. First Nations have been practicing this for generations upon generations.
West African Igbo also practiced conservation by giving stewardship over totem species to certain villages and regions. In Eha Mufu in Enugu, it is taboo to fish the river. Other totems include python, tortoise, monkey, crocodiles, alligators, crabs, butterflies, and snails, as well as sacred groves and species of trees. Many Aboriginal cultures additionally separated and balanced power between male and female spheres of responsibility. Male ceremony and female ceremony. Male sites and female sites. Male knowledge and female knowledge. Among Igbo, Umuada is council of elder daughters married away from village, whose separation from daily village life makes them impartial, balancing force in arbitration and conflict resolution. Because Igbo democracy is founded on kin groups, outsiders and their descendants were treated as lower caste, Osu, until Igbo SJW, Ogechukwu Madwagu, and Umuada played leading roles in abolishing this caste system.
The third level of kinship is the skin name. Similar to a surname, a skin name indicates a person's bloodline. It also conveys information about how generations are linked and how they should interact. Husbands and wives don't share the same skin name, and children don't share their parents' name. It is a sequential system. In a matrilineal nation, if a woman with a skin name of 1 has a baby, the child's skin name will be 2. All other 2s are now considered the sibling of that child, and all 1s are considered their parents. When that child grows up and has children of their own, those children will be 3s. This sequential naming continues until the end of the cycle is reached. Then it goes back to 1, and the cycle starts all over again.
Western Australians practiced generational moiety. So your power over your children is balanced by making them same generation as your parents, with same word often used for grandparent and grandchild, seeming strange to outsiders who do not understand profound separation and balance of generational power it represents. Among Igbo, youth are grouped together into age-grade associations which defend community and enforce laws of Council of Elders, balancing youth executive and elder legislative with female arbitration. Thus, while Igbo's system is not as sophisticated as Aboriginal, nobody separates and balances power in micro-government with obsessive sophistication of Aboriginal Australians. #facts. It proves that core features of Aboriginal micro-government can be integrated into European-style republican system to make it more decentralized and robust.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
The process of writing Things Fall Apart actually changed my life. Because I had to invent the language of that story. It was not something that anybody was teaching anywhere. The conversation between Igbo and English, you see. And so I imagined this conversation between two equally powerful languages, not one language and some pidgin thing. I don't like the use of the word tribe. It's defined always in terms of the primitive. Yeah. So, and I wasn't interested in writing about the primitive, the sense that I'm talking to somebody like me. No, you may even be somebody better than me, but not so much better that you can afford to have something less than the perfect language.
Top anti-tyranny tradition of North America was Guyana Shagawa, Iroquois Great Law of Peace. Power was separated and balanced across 5 nations, each with their own council, electing lords to Council of Confederacy. Women owned house and land and nominated lords of Confederacy and war chiefs. Perhaps because Confederacy had female co-founder, Jigon Sassi. Power was additionally balanced between civilian legislative lords of Confederacy, who debated and decided, and military executive war chiefs, who could take no part in council, but delivered complaints from people. Meritocracy of pine tree chiefs was established for especially wise individuals. Elders were honored. Religious rites, festivals, and sacred trees were protected. According to Iroquois oral genealogies and accounts of great eclipse when 5 nations came together, founding of Confederacy could be dated to 1142 AD, nearly 900 years ago. By separating military power from civilian and empowering women, Iroquois had overcome anacyclosis.
I drill when I drill a bicuspid. It's swell, though they tell me I'm maladjusted.
Still men.
Yes, we're men. Men is what we are.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
In Ibonri Kingdom, as in Iroquois Confederacy, Ezenri's authority was separated from military force, instead wielding spiritual authority over loose voluntary federation of village governments and regional powers. Although Igbo women did not nominate male rulers as Iroquois clan mothers did, they were protected from abuse, not only by arbitration powers of Umuada, but by public shaming tactics called sitting on targets, surrounding their compounds, singing, dancing, mocking, and a little light vandalism.
Feminist, a person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes.
The people you are after are the people you depend on. We cook your meals, we haul your trash, we connect your calls, we drive your ambulances, we guard you while you sleep. Do not fuck with us.
Council of Elders, Ozo Meritocracy, honored shrines from Otutunsu Royal Coronation Shrine to sacred groves, to Ikenga shrines to individualism, and tradition protected by totemism and taboos meant that Igbo, like Iroquois, obeyed all Buddha's principles of conservative democracy.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
In 1960s, archaeologist Thurston Shaw excavated Ibo Ukwu site in southeast Nigeria, dated to 10th century AD. Over 1,000 years ago. Shaw found pendant with itchy facial scarifications traditional for Ozo nobles of Nri Kingdom. Underground burial chamber was found with body recognizable as Ezenri, elected priest king. This evidence, supported by oral genealogy, suggests Igbo Republic not only existed, but flourished 1,000 years ago, older even than Iroquois. By combining top anti-tyranny techniques from 4 continents, West African Igbo had overcome anacyclosis and, more remarkable yet, they had devised this entire system while isolated by Sahara Desert and oceans from all those other continents.
We're still men.
Yes, we're men. Men is what we are.
According to Igbo tradition, their system was founded by a man named Eri. So wise he was rumored to be centuries old and to come from ancient Egypt or lost tribe of Israel. Some people really took that idea and ran with it. Eri's origin, however, is less important than the fact that if he was a real person and created this system, that would mean Eri was greater political genius than Socrates or even Buddha. What does any of this anarcho-wank about systems of government have to do with food? I mean, come on. We know there's not going to be an Australian Aboriginal connection to agriculture.
Well, let's look at what the explorers reported of the Aboriginal agricultural economy.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
The Deputy Prime Minister of this country in the year 2017 said Aboriginal children should not be taught their own culture and language because it would retard them. Her fellow ministers and advisors weighed in with the opinion that Aboriginal culture was flawed because we hadn't invented the wheel or done anything useful with the land. Lieutenant Grey, in his 1839 exploration of parts of Western Australia so far unseen by Europeans, saw yam gardens over 5 kilometres wide and extending a distance past the horizon further than he could see, simply because they had been so deeply tilled he could not walk across them. Sir Thomas Mitchell, in the country that is now the Queensland-New South Wales border area, rode through 9 miles of stooped grain that his fellows describe as being like an English field of harvest. These are Aboriginal houses, Cape York. These houses could hold 25, 30 people. The ones in Western Victoria, some of them could hold 52. Isaac Beatty saw the hillsides of Melbourne were terraced in the process of yam production and that the tilth of the soil was so light you could run your fingers through it. The stone is that big. It's too heavy to use above your waist. It was attached to a right angle handle. The leading edge had only ever been used in the soil. Only one of the stones in the museum was labelled. This one is called a bogan pick. It is a plough. It is a land-turning tool used by Aboriginal people. There are thousands of them. They've never been described in any academic text other than what the explorers described. Charles Sturt had his life saved in Central Australia when he came upon people who were harvesting a river valley and supplied him with water from their well, roast duck and cake. Both Mitchell and Sturt described the baked goods as the lightest and sweetest they had ever tasted. The same man I talked about before, Jonathan Jones, has found Aboriginal pottery in the South Australian Museum at Adelaide. Pottery, never been exhibited. Kirby notices a man fishing on a weir his fellows had built across the river. Well, Kirby assumes with great reluctance that blacks had built it, but only because he knows he's the first white man to see them. These are the Brewarrina fish traps, arguably the oldest human construction on Earth. Of course, no one ever goes there, no Australian. This is a fishing machine from Cape York Peninsula, because every fish in the river that wants to come downstream has to go through one of those two apertures. The whole thing is built on stumps. It's a piece of architecture, it's a piece of engineering, it's a piece of industry, and it's a perpetual fishing machine. And it can be closed off so that the fish just go on their merry way, and it can be opened again to operate it. We also have to restore the sections in Lieutenant Grey's journal where he speaks about Aboriginal housing, irrigation, agriculture and road making. Because when the journal was edited and published, Those were the only items left out.
How could the earliest explorers possibly have found evidence of extensive Aboriginal agriculture that just disappeared? Unless there'd been some kind of massive genocide. Let's get back to Demeter. What does anarcho-wank about systems of government have to do with food? Those long days of winter when Demeter wandered whole world weeping for her beautiful daughter Persephone. She asked God of Sun to tell her who had taken fair Persephone, and God of Sun answered, Persephone's own father, great God Zeus, Lord of all, gave her to his brother Hades as gift. He lured her to fields of flowers, where Hades could abduct her. But worry not. Hades is high-status husband and will buy nice things. Hearing this, Demeter screamed like hawk whose nest is plundered. She swore never to return to Olympus, home of gods whose powers had made them cruel, who treated human lives as pawns and playthings. Dressed as common beggar woman, Goddess was shown kindness by common people. So, when Persephone was returned to Demeter, and famine of winter lifted, she determined that people must depend on no god, not even herself. Summoning honest and strong-hearted Triptolemus, mortal from city which had showed her kindness, she gave him secrets of agriculture, seeds and plowing, so that man's food would never again depend on whims of selfish, unreliable gods. So it is that Ceres, as Demeter is called in the Roman Republic, is worshipped as goddess of both crops and democracy. For if Triptolemus had not spread food democracy by open source food technology and widespread farmer ownership to break monopoly of gods, there could have been no true republic. By final years of Roman Republic, democracy had increased status of women so far that female orator Hortensia was permitted to directly address Roman Forum, establishing principle of no taxation without representation. Big inspiration to Edmund Burke. So close to female representation principle of longer-lasting republics. But unfortunately, Roman Republic soon collapsed due to insufficient feminization of its culture. Women voters have had a very considerable influence on party platforms and governmental policy, especially on the humane and social welfare sides. Nothing can be safer for the Commonwealth than the informed judgment of the mothers of the land. Calvin Coolidge, 1930. In 1860, Maori chief Wirihana Aotearangi wrote down oral traditional history of how his people had come to New Zealand on huge ancestral canoe, Tainui Waka, commissioned by Chieftainess Whakauterangi around 13th century AD. Whakauterangi brought sweet potato, mulberry, fruit tree, and taro with her on voyage, and cultivated them in the rich gardens at Pakarikari, before spreading seeds and knowledge of cultivation to her descendants. Maori saying, Te kete ruku ruku a Whakauterangi, small basket of Whakauterangi, small gift that keeps on giving. Whakauterangi's understanding of connection between open source food technology and peace, self-sufficiency, and good governance earns her place on Global Council of Libertarian Elders. Fast forward 6 centuries. While Aotearangi was recording tale of Whakauterangi's leadership, devastating war broke out between British colonizers and Taranaki tribe, allies of Tainui, over land rights, ending in massive land confiscation by settlers. Taranaki elders, Te Whiti Orongomai and Tohu Kakahi, fused Christian and Maori prophetic tradition to found community of peace at Parihaka, welcoming Maori from any tribe who would wear white feather to symbolize pledge to renounce violence and slavery. Buddha would be proud. In favor of cooperative labor and self-sufficiency. After a decade of peace and prosperity, colonial government sent in land surveyors in 1878. So Parihaka prophets devised tactics of immediatism to resist, non-violently mending destroyed fences and plowing disputed land. First Occupy movement. Missionaries did tell Maori warriors to turn their swords into plowshares. On November 5th, 1881, Native Minister John Bryce led 1,500 armed constabulary soldiers and volunteers into Parihaka village under West Coast Peace Preservation Act, designed to crack down on pacifists. Te Huiti and Toho were detained indefinitely without trial, followed by weeks of destruction, plunder, widespread rape, and mass deportations. Finally, government granted reserves to Taranaki Maori to be compulsorily leased to white farmers for benefit of Maori and in interests of settlement. Maori received rentals of just 4% of market value for their land, which they needed to buy food since they couldn't farm it, creating manufactured dependence and exploitable insecurity crucial to their colonization. In 1916, Maori traditional healer and self-proclaimed reincarnation of Christ, Rua Kenana Hepatipa, was arrested for sedition after founding prosperous non-violent community with farming cooperative, savings bank, and Maori mining company.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
Meanwhile, in West Africa, staple food of Igbo today is yam, grown by labor-intensive farming by families. Farm work was honored, celebrated in sacred New Yam Festival, climaxing in Thanksgiving called Afia Jioku. Trade brings wealth. Women tended cassava, which somehow led cassava to be less prestigious than yam. Boys with their toys. In pre-colonial times, members of Ozo aristocracy were appointed based on moral reputation, popularity with public, and wealth creation. When initiated into Ozo, they received 9 shares in early form of stock exchange called Ofo Itanani, stall of immortality, in Kauri currency, giving society's top wealth creators mutual or cooperative stake in each other's success and public interest.
The Igbo are the third largest ethnic group in Nigeria. The origins of the Igbo are shrouded in myths and legends, but oral traditions and archaeological evidence suggest that they've lived in their present area for several millennia. The Igbo had a unique social and political organization as it was not uniform and sometimes not centralized. The Igbo had many regional powers, but the most popular and perhaps the most effective was the Kingdom of Nri. The Kingdom of Nri had tremendous political and religious influence over most of Igbo land. In all honesty, the Igbo Kingdom of Nri is the most fascinating African kingdom I've ever studied because of how it developed and grew. I'll go as far and say that the Kingdom of Nri is definitely the most unique kingdom in all of African history. Why? Well, because the kingdom grew not because of war as did all or most other African kingdoms. It grew because it sent religious missionaries or priests to convert the people and incorporate them into the larger Nri state. The entire kingdom was ruled by a sort of priest king called Eze Nri. The Kingdom of Nri was perhaps one of the most morally upright places in West African history. It became a sort of safe haven for rejected people in their communities, and also a place where slaves were set free from bondage.
Excavations at Igbo Ukwu show that pre-colonial Igbo were wealthy trading civilization with Egyptian glass beads. Igbo traders became involved in profitable transatlantic slave trade as documented in 18th century by enslaved Igbo writer Alauda Equiano. At that time, Eze title was shared between two wealthy merchants, Nrialike and Nriapia, who allowed Igbo participation in slave trade, but tried to limit its cruelty by declaring it abomination to kill or bleed slave. By mid-19th century, young firebrand Ezenri Enweleana formed military alliance Amakom to resist Aro slave raiders, renouncing slavery and forming settlement for fugitive slaves at Amobia. It was said that any slave who set foot on sacred ground of Igbo Nri Kingdom would instantly be set free. Such resistance and Nri abolition of slavery was only possible because slavery was never foundational to Igbo economy of farmer ownership.
The socio-religious influence of Nri at its height of power developed into what historians have acknowledged as a sort of holy land for Africans and compared it to other religious cities across the world. The kingdom of Nri is considered by the Igbo to be the oldest Igbo state, emerging around 900 AD, and they've been called the warriors of peace.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
And just look at these half-naked Igbo savages in their jungle! Ugh. Would you ever imagine that they're the first major civilization to solve the problem of democratic collapse? All I'm asking for is honesty. Let's not even start on their tradition of gender transition and same-sex marriage. Wait, if the world's longest-lasting republic has a tradition of gender transition and same-sex marriage, and suspiciously Me Too-ish techniques for connecting male reputation to female approval, does that prove that civilizational collapse and degeneracy are actually caused by super boring stuff, like decay of separation and balance of power and erosion of self-employment?
'Cause I'm a dentist and a thick cell. Say ah. Say ah. Say ah. Now spit.
But what, I hear you ask, does any of this have to do with Monsanto?
Objection.
Just answer the question, please.
Mr. Gautama, is it true that you instructed followers in Vanija Sutta that right livelihood means abstaining from trade in weapons, living beings, meat, drugs, and poison? Buddha witnessed birth of capitalism in ancient India. He immediately understood that free markets only work in public interest if their profit incentives are in public interest. Over 2,000 years later, anarcho-capitalists still struggle with this concept. If drug dealers profit from addicts, they will promote addiction. If arms dealers profit from war, they promote war. If slave traders profit from slavery, they promote slavery. And if traders of poison profit from poisons, They promote poisons. When Monsanto merged with Bayer Big Pharma in 2018, they acquired 60% of global revenue in seeds and pesticides. Originally, when concept of genetically modified organisms was pitched, it was claimed it would benefit the environment because seeds could be genetically engineered not to require any pesticides. But since Monsanto owned both genetically modified seeds and pesticide company, they instead engineered seeds to be more tolerant to Roundup, making farmers use more pesticide. Roll tape.
In this film, we'll look at how the seed has changed in farming and in our culture from a sacred element and the giver of life to a powerful commodity used to monopolize global food production.
Once a company starts to see royalty collections from every seed, it pushes its genetically engineered crops to replace the native crops that farmers and peasants have grown over millennia.
I think the real concern is that there is an increasing corporate control of the seed chain, and increasingly that means that a very small number of people are having a massive influence over the way in which farmers are able to farm. Traditional practices of saving seed are now under threat, and what that does essentially is to put corporate profit ahead of the ability of farmers to feed themselves and their communities.
Intellectual property laws had long asserted that patents could be claimed on new and proven inventions. But in 1995, the World Trade Organization proposed a radical change in international law. Under pressure from global corporations, they ruled that microorganisms and microbiological processes already existing in nature could be patented. Under this new law, a seed could be genetically engineered to contain particular genes which could then be patented and privately owned.
As far as the seed is concerned, this leap in terms of property rights on life itself is the most serious threat to seeds of diversity, seeds of freedom that are in the hands of peasants.
Canadian farmer Percy Schmeiser had been growing canola, saving and breeding the seed for 50 years. But in 1998, some of his seed was found to contain the patented Roundup Ready gene.
Whether it's seeds blown in from your neighbor's field, pollen flow by the wind, or from bees, if that happens to you, you no longer own your seeds to plants. They immediately, under patent law, become the ownership of the corporation.
Percy was taken to the Canadian Federal Court for patent infringement. His defense, that the GM presence was accidental, was rejected by the court, and in 2000, he was found guilty. In the Indian state of Gujarat, hundreds of thousands of farmers persuaded to grow genetically modified Bt cotton, a crop which produces its own pesticide, found that in time the pests developed their own resistance to the crop. The rise of these super pests has forced the farmers to use ever stronger pesticides.
Instead of controlling pests and controlling weeds, you are getting super pests and super weeds. So even in the narrow domain of weed control and pest control, the technology is failing.
Today, the seed and agrochemical industry has largely fallen under the control of just a few key companies. Hybrid seed corporations like DuPont and Syngenta, agrochemical companies Bayer and BASF, and the GM giant Monsanto. Within this concentrated center of power lies not only the massive profits from seed production, but the decision-making and agenda setting, which will ultimately establish the legacy of our global agricultural system. In this future, crop and seed diversity will be assigned to the dustbin of history at a cost that we're only beginning to comprehend.
No! Farming has nothing to do with conservatism. Every sound remedy that can be devised should be applied for the relief of the farmer. He represents a character, a type of citizenship, and a public necessity that must be preserved and afforded every facility for regaining prosperity. Systems of cooperative marketing, created by the farmers themselves, supervised by competent management, without doubt would be of assistance. Our agricultural schools ought to have thorough courses in the theory of organization and cooperative marketing. Calvin Coolidge. First Annual Message, 1923. For a guy called Silent Cal, he sure does yap a lot, doesn't he? So, Ceres became member of the Consentes, 12 ruling gods of Rome, whose golden statues stood in Roman Forum. Yet, why did Roman Republic believe that goddess of agriculture should be goddess of democracy? Fall of Roman Republic coincided with large spike in slavery.
Starring Kirk Douglas as Spartacus, slave, gladiator, invincible fighter. Laurence Olivier as Crassus, symbol of Rome's majesty and might.
I'm not after glory. I'm after Spartacus.
Gene Simmons as the slave Aurelia, whose body was bought and sold, but whose love enveloped Spartacus with a radiance few men have known. John Gavin as Julius Caesar, ambitious staff officer. And Tony Curtis as Antoninus, who loved Spartacus like a brother. In the powerful story of the gladiator rebel who sprang from slavery to challenge the awesome might of Imperial Rome.
The symbol of the Senate. All the power of Rome.
I imagine a God for slaves. I pray.
What do you pray for?
I pray for a son who will be born free.
In 225 BC, Roman Republic, 2 centuries before collapse, slaves were 15% of total population, mostly captives of war and criminals, employed as domestic servants. By dawn of Roman Empire, they were 35% of population. Not only that, they moved from being domestic servants, as in ancient Egypt, to becoming foundation of Roman agriculture. In 160 BC's De Agricultura, Cato the Elder, statesman and first historian of Roman Republic, described citizen farmers as ideal soldiers of Rome for their loyalty and bravery. But in final century of Republic, over 1 million citizen farmers lost their lands to wealthy owners of slave plantations, with higher-ranking villicus slaves as overseers to control other slaves. Slaves also dominated labor in manufacture and all other jobs that displaced former farmers might aspire to, leaving them as mass of urban poor on grain handouts. Populist firebrand Tiberius Gracchus received support from desperate commoners to limit size of plantations. Even if he had to undermine Roman Republic's democratic norms, checks and balances to do so. In final century of Republic, Spartacus led massive slave uprising against their masters, whose fiercest fighters were gladiators and agricultural slaves, right there in Roman heartland of Italy. Shortly after, triumvirate was formed between Julius Caesar, top expansionist general, Marcus Licinius Crassus, richest man in Rome, and Pompey the Great, also incredibly wealthy and aristocratic general and statesman who took credit for putting down Spartacus's rebellion. This triumvirate of military and oligarchic power joined forces to get around checks and balances of Roman Republic, and increasingly angry dispossessed commoners by sliding Rome into dictatorship. Roman Republic was dead in water.
I will give the people a vision of Rome, and they'll love me for it. And they'll soon forget the tedious sermonizing of a few dry old men. I will give the people the greatest vision of their lives.
We take away their freedom, and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum. You bring them death, and they will love him for it.
There was another West African civilization, Songhai Empire, founded in 15th century by great conqueror Sunni Ali Bear, merciless master of siege warfare, river navies and cavalry. Songhai Empire had epic architecture like Great Mosque of Jenny, magnificent as St. Peter's Basilica. They had great scholarship like Sankore University, founded in 988 AD, 100 years before Europe's oldest university in Bologna.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
They also had crippling reliance on slavery. By 16th century reign of ruler Askia Dawood, famously liberal lover of jokes who knew Quran by heart, empire was totally reliant on food produced by slaves, managed by Fanafi, higher-ranking slaves, until half of empire was enslaved. Only Askia could provide seed for planting, monopolizing supply chain like medieval African Monsanto. And all harvest belonged to Askia to distribute, guaranteeing food supply to his army and his scholars, pillars of his support. Army, which could not take initiative to purchase firearms or innovate new battle tactics because of overly centralized command. Scholars, sophisticated in mathematics and astronomy, but unable to criticize empire's fundamental structural flaws because they were under direct patronage of Askia. Top scholar Ahmed Baba did cautiously condemn racial slavery, but only to suggest religious slavery could replace it. Much as prestigious Pulitzer Prize winner Walter Durante and Nobel Prize winner George Bernard Shaw, having both received generous patronage of Joseph Stalin, struggled to discredit massive man-made famine in Ukraine caused by Stalin's collectivization and centralization of agriculture.
This is my report on the Soviet question.
What's your answer?
I don't have one. The Kremlin is broke. So how are the Soviets suddenly on a spending spree?
Paul, I need your help.
Arranging an interview with Stalin.
Garrett, I've been trying to reach you.
Go see Walter Durante at the New York Times. Listen, I really need to talk to you. I found something big. You can break the story wide open.
Paul?
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Durante.
So why are you really here?
I need your help.
This is Ada Brooks. She's my star. Paul's dead. It's a robbery 3 days ago.
What do you want?
The story no one is talking about.
I saw him. 4 bullets in his back.
And you don't think it was a robbery? What was Paul working on?
Ukraine.
You know how rich this country is, how vast. South is nothing but wheat fields. Grain is Stalin's gold.
Who gives the agenda now?
I don't have an agenda, unless you call truth an agenda.
Yes, but whose truth? What will you do when the others come forward?
What's being done here will transform mankind.
We can still do something. No. We cannot let Stalin get away with this.
What do you expect me to do exactly?
The Soviet Union is not the workers' paradise that was promised. It is not the great experiment that you read about in the press. Stalin is not the man who you think he is.
Are you saying there's no hope?
Or how corporate media in America never blames system of corporatism for problems. In 1590, Morocco invaded Songhai with firearms, and it collapsed like deck of cards. Not unlike Aztec Empire, most materially and technologically advanced in North America, founded on slavery, conquest, and human sacrifice, slaughtered by vast alliance of people they'd fucked over. To say that Aztec and Songhai empires were most advanced civilizations on their continents is not statement of fact, but value judgment, prioritizing elite wealth over common prosperity, dominance hierarchy over equal opportunity, expansion over stability, and centralization over liberty. Since Western values praise Songhai and Aztecs over Igbo and Iroquois, they put themselves on collapsy side of civilization.
In the last 20 years, global food production has risen steadily at 2% per year, while global population growth has risen just over 1% annually. We have more than enough food to feed our world's population, but people are still starving. Scarcity is not the problem. The problem is accessibility and affordability. Who determines these factors of the current food systems? A handful of agri-food corporations. Thanks to special interest groups, the influence of money in politics, and a revolving door relationship between corporations and government officials, these corporations maintain authority and power in shaping the global food system. Through influencing international trade agreements and agricultural policies, corporations increase their profit margins while ignoring the well-being of the global population and the health of the environment. Industrial agriculture is detrimental in almost every sense. As a leading source of global warming, it emits more greenhouse gases than all cars, trucks, trains, and airplanes combined. It also destroys the economies of rural farming communities by forcing small farmers off their land and out of business. And it's unbelievably wasteful. Industrial agriculture uses at least 75% of the world's agricultural resources, but provides food for less than 30% of the global population. Compare that to agroecological farming, which uses less than 25% of the world's agricultural resources and provides food to 70% of the world's population. Since 2017, we've scraped the internet, tracked down federal documents, explored government-corporate relationships, and analysed academic research and databases. From our findings, we've built a database with information on 10 of the largest food-related corporations that illuminates the larger corporate influence within the global food system. We've organised the information in a clear and digestible format to make it as accessible as possible for every viewer, and we will continue to grow and develop this database over the next year. To start bearing witness, visit the Haas Institute's Shahidi Project website today.
Wait. If control over allocation of resources is a dimension of democracy, and private property in the free market are the most decentralized way to allocate resources on the basis of want or need, does that explain why Marxists always slide into authoritarianism when they try to abolish the free market? Ask a Marxist friend. It's hours of fun. Our 3rd century BC Mauryan Emperor Ashoka the Great, humane ruler of India, beloved of gods, repentant slaughterer of Kalinga, convert to Buddhism post-repentance, and star of sexy Bollywood epics, are you not? When ancient Indian republicanism collapsed, after shitting on Buddha's non-aggression principles, Emperor Ashoka kept Buddhist ideals alive and spread them on major pillar edicts, big inscriptions on pillars. On Major Pillar Edict 5, Ashoka proclaims first environmentalist policy in recorded history. King amiable and beloved of the gods speaks thus: When I had been anointed 26 years, the following animals were declared by me to be inviolable: parrots, myna birds, wild geese, bats, queen ants, terrapins, boneless fish, the Ganges river dolphin, skatefish, tortoises, and porcupines, squirrels, free-range bulls, iguanas, the rhinoceros, white doves, domestic doves, and all quadrupeds which are neither useful nor edible. Those she-goats, ewes, and sows, which are either with young or in milk, are inviolable, and also those young ones less than 6 months old. Cocks must not be caponed. Husks containing living animals must not be burned. Forests must not be burned, either uselessly or in order to destroy living beings. Is it surprising that India invented environmentalism? Have you never wondered why a country as crowded as India still has lions, tigers, and rhinos? You don't see wolves and bears running around England, do you? Exactly. As student of Buddhism, Emperor Ashoka believed in dependent origination, concept that life is created by unpredictably complex webs of cause and effects, like ecosystems.
Keystone species are those that play a unique and crucial role in ecosystem function. They have a disproportionately large effect on their environment relative to their abundance. Because of their key role in maintaining biodiversity, efforts to manage and protect keystone species can help stabilize the entire biological community. The term keystone species was first coined by Dr. Robert Payne in 1969. His research found that the purple sea star prevented mussels from overpopulating rocky intertidal ecosystems in the Pacific Northwest. Because of their key role in maintaining biodiversity, efforts to manage and protect keystone species can help stabilize the entire biological community.
But that's going to ensure in the future that all of those things will continue, or what New South Wales government like to call sustainability. First Nations have been practicing this for generations upon generations.
In 1962, hippie scientist Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, warning about synthetic pesticides' effect on insect life, inspiring creation of U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Today, insect pollinators are collapsing, while super weeds and pests are evolving to cope with more and more poisons. Not every species is keystone species, but if you allow yourself to destroy apparently useless species, sooner or later you will fuck up.
You got no confidence, of course, but you got a real charming quality.
What?
What is that?
That's so pretty.
No, it's not pretty at all. They're rats with wings.
No, it's probably a good omen. It'll bring us good luck.
Oh, get it out of here. It's probably one of those killer pigeons.
No, get something for it to eat. Coax it now. What are you doing?
It's the morning of June 12th, 1944, and a pigeon named Paddy is making an epic 368-kilometer journey. He manages to dodge Nazi falcons, then beats on through stormy weather, flying an average of 79 kilometers per hour for almost 5 hours straight. Paddy's carrying the first news of the D-Day invasion back to England. Pigeon delivery systems are ancient human practices. Seeing their meat as a protein source and their nitrogen-rich poop as the perfect fertilizer, humans brought pigeons into captivity as far back as 10,000 years ago.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
But today, vocal minority of corporate-sponsored right-wing pundits are trying to redefine traditional meaning of conservatism by conserving bugger all. In 1767, Catherine Macaulay, first libertarian historian of England, announced that broadly distributed farmer ownership of land was vital underpinning of republic. Let the agrarian be settled in such a manner that the balance of land inclines in favor of the popular side, that only form of government which is capable of preserving dominion and freedom to the people. 3 years later, Macaulay, big student of Rome and the Republic, was proved right by distant Bengal. East India Company was private British corporation ruling India for profit, like a narco-capitalist wet dream. Under India's Mughal rulers, when famine struck, rulers would cancel taxes and invest in irrigation. But once India was privatized by East India Company, they tripled taxes, wiping out farmers' surplus grain stores and forcing them to grow cash crops. Then, when famine struck and caused mass deaths, compensated themselves by hiking taxes up again. Between 1 and 10 million Bengalis died. The first time in 1770. Then severe famine struck Bengal again under British rule in 1783, 1866, 1873, 1892, 1897, and 1943 to 44. Those were the worst ones. I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion. The famine was their own fault for breeding like rabbits. Ha ha! Winston Churchill. Inspiration to us all. Edmund Burke, nephew of modern conservative philosophy, was outraged and struggled to impeach Warren Hastings, Governor General of India. Magna Carta is a charter to restrain power and to destroy monopoly. The East India Charter is a charter to establish monopoly and to create power. Political power and commercial monopoly are not the rights of men. Edmund Burke, 1783. Meanwhile, back in 18th century China, astronomer, mathematician, and mother of Chinese feminism, Wang Zhenyi, witnessed drought and famine on her way to Fuchun in 1790s. Rather than simply blame nature, she blamed China's centralized bureaucracy, its extractive model of taxation, and its failure to distribute resources fairly. Mass confiscation of Irish land forced peasants to rent land from British or Anglo-Irish landlords who prioritized profit. Irish peasants were forced to rent smaller and smaller plots of land, only able to feed themselves by potato monoculture. So, when potato blight fungus wiped out crop in 1845, massive famine struck. In 1846, Lord John Russell's Liberal government took over. Big anarcho-capitalist believers in laissez-faire free market economics. Civil servant in charge, Charles Trevelyan cancelled corn handouts to stop Irish getting dependent, allowed landlords to export grain for profit and evict tenants, asked Irish to pay for famine relief through their local taxes, which were plummeting because of famine. British troops fired into Waterford crowd to stop them seizing grain destined for export, killing 2 peasants. 1 million Irish died in famine, and 2 million emigrated as a result. On island of 8 million population. Thomas Davis, father of Irish nationalism and big advocate of farmer ownership, died just as famine was breaking out. But there was a young girl at his funeral, Jane Elgie, moved to become new poetic voice of outrage for years of famine under pen name Speranza, hope. Speranza clearly blamed system of landlordism and foreign rule for famine, not just potato fungus.
Today we wring our hands because the Darling River stops flowing in January. We seemed bemused when the overploughed soils of the Wimmera blew about our heads in Melbourne in the 60s, 70s and 80s. We wonder why we cannot get a second yield of hybrid blue gum from the forests of Tasmania, Western Australia and Victoria. So in apparent wrath at the vagaries of nature, we poison that weedling second crop. Even today, our agricultural scientists seem to be surprised when the Aboriginal domesticates thrive in the soils and climate to which they were born. These plants are an environmental boon to the nation, apart from the fact that, as they're all perennial, with the large root masses of plants adapted to dry conditions, they sequester carbon. If we only dedicated 5% of our current agricultural lands to these plants, we would go a long way to meeting our carbon emission reduction targets. And that Panicum decompositum grows in the sand of Lake Mungo. It only needs one watering from one rainfall, and it will produce grain that you can turn into flour and bake bread. There's the bread.
Western supremacy is not racist. It's just really, really popular with racists.
Listen to the jingle and the rumble and the roar. She's rolling through New England to the West Pacific shore. It's a long time we've been waiting, now she's whistling round the bend to ride on into Congress on that farmer labor train. There's folks of every color and they're riding side by side in the swamps of Louisiana and across the Great Divide. From the wheat fields and the orchards and the lowing cattle range, and they're rolling on to victory on this farmer labor train. This train pulled into Washington a bright and happy day. When she steamed into the station you could hear the people say, there's that farmer labor special, she's full of union men, heading on the White House on the farmer labor train.
And this is not about skin color. It's about values. It's about our ideas. Because our ideas are the best ideas.
That's when my mama said.
What did she say?
She said, my boy, I think someday you'll find a way to make your natural tendencies pay. You'll be a dentist. You have a talent for causing things. Son, be a dentist. People will pay you to be inhumane. Your temperament's wrong for the priesthood, and teaching would suit you still less. Son, be a dentist. You'll be a success.